Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the controversy surrounding the video of Steven Crowder arguing with his wife? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. Looking at a few of my recent pre-release videos on Patreon, we see enigmatic thumbnails like reality show contestant of death, farmhouse false confession, and unwanted advanced murder. In addition, there are over 150 other videos available on my Patreon. My Patreon account can be found at patreon.com/drgrande. The link is also in the description for this video. First, I will look at the background of this case, move to the summary of the controversial video, then offer my analysis. Steven Crowder is a conservative political commentator who operates a YouTube channel that has almost 6 million subscribers. In 2012, Steven married a woman named Hillary Corzine. In August of 2021, they had twins, Magnus and Charlotte. Earlier in Steven's career, he was a stand-up comedian, a voice actor, and had a few very small roles in movies. He worked for Fox News for a while before making negative statements about them. They ended their relationship with him, or as it's now called, they pulled a Tucker Carlson. For several years, Steven had his own program called Louder with Crowder on a media company called The Blaze. During his career, Steven has been accused of making racist statements and promoting misleading information about the 2020 U.S. presidential election. In January 2023, Steven became involved in a disagreement with the Daily Wire. This is a conservative media company. The parties had opened a discussion about Steven moving his show over to Daily Wire. They talked about a tentative offer of $12.5 million a year, but Steven wanted $30 million a year. During this dispute, Steven recorded a conversation with the CEO of Daily Wire. Some people thought that making the recording indicated that Steven was sneaky and underhanded. A former co-host on the Louder with Crowder show accused Steven of regularly recording telephone calls without consent. Now moving to a summary of the controversial video. In April of 2023, Steven made an announcement about his marriage. He said that his wife Hillary had filed for divorce in 2021. Steven claimed that he had been living with a proverbial boot on his neck for years. Hillary's family sent an email to a journalist named Yashar Ali, suggesting that Hillary wanted to save the marriage, but Steven left their family home and hired a divorce attorney. Steven also allegedly tried to cut Hillary off financially. Hillary's family supplied the journalist with a video that was captured on a Ring security camera. The behavior on the video is consistent with the idea that Steven had mistreated Hillary. Here is a summary of what happened in the video. Much of this is paraphrased. According to the timestamp, the video was recorded on June 26, 2021. Hillary was nearly 8 months pregnant at this time. Steven and Hillary are on a backyard patio, presumably at their house. The video starts with Steven seated and Hillary standing up. Evidently, they are having a conversation about how Hillary wanted to take the car to drive to a store. Steven talks about how he drew a boundary and would not permit her to take the car. He said, quote, "Because you refuse to do wifely things, then I will go pick up the groceries," unquote. He continues by saying, "I know it's not reasonable, but I'll go do it." Steven then said something like, "Hillary, how do you respect the men?" Hillary walks back toward the house. Steven says, "No, you're not taking the car." Hillary replies, "I'll ask someone to pick me up. Who would you like me to ask?" Steven says, "What is that, a threat?" Hillary indicates that it was not a threat. Steven suggests that Hillary can get an Uber. Hillary states that she can't. Steven then says, quote, "Listen to me. You want to walk out right now. Listen to me. I can't go to the gym. I can't go to my parents. I can't call my friends. I can't be home," unquote. He appears to be complaining about all the things he can't do without the car, although those last two items don't really make any sense. Why would he need a car to call his friends, and isn't he already home? Either way, the conversation continues with Steven saying, quote, "Hillary, just think of how boxed in you made me," unquote. Hillary offers to pick up whatever Stephen needed, but he rejects the idea. He then follows up by asking, "Do you understand the difference of my life being set to the second, and you're going, 'I'll be back when I'm back'?" Stephen appears to be referencing a perceived difference in the personality trait conscientiousness, like he is highly conscientious and Hillary is not. Stephen follows up this question by stating the only way out of this is discipline and respect. He suggests that they are at an impasse, and Hillary agrees with him. Stephen says, quote, "You throw in your hat, you give up so easily, I don't give up," unquote. Hillary responds, quote, "Okay, I love you, but Stephen, your abuse is sick," unquote. Stephen then sternly says, watch it, blank watch it." Hillary informs Stephen that she needs some space and tells him, "I love you very much." Stephen replies, "I don't love you. That's the big problem. I've never received love from you." He then argues that Hillary maintains a pattern where she fails to complete tasks, but then says, "I love you more than life itself." Stephen points out that this is not fair. He calls it disingenuous. He recommends that Hillary become someone, a wife worthy. Hillary says, quote, "I'm not going to engage anymore. I'm going to go," unquote. She invites Stephen to text him what he needs, and she will pick it up. Hillary follows up with, "I love you. I'm committed to you." Stephen responds, "Are you? Put on some gloves. Are you committed enough to do those things?" As I understand it, the whole issue with the gloves is about giving medication to a dog. Hillary was worried that the medication would be toxic to her, so she didn't want to make contact with it. This argument continues for a moment, and then they both enter the house. Allegedly, Stephen would later admit that he screamed, "I will blank you up." After this, Hillary left the house in fear. Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts in a few areas that stood out to me in this case. It's worth noting that I will be offering theories about what happened. These are just my opinions. Item number 1. As I analyze the argument that Stephen and Hillary had, it's important to recognize that this couple was together for 9 years. That's over 4.7 million minutes. Extracting the true nature of a relationship from a 3-minute video is not really possible. This video may characterize their relationship, or it may not. Item number 2. The couple's argument appeared to be about power dynamics and differing levels of conscientiousness. But at the surface, it was an argument about who would control the couple's one motor vehicle. Steven Crowder may be surprised to learn that in the United States, it is legal to own more than one vehicle. Having multiple vehicles would not solve the marital discord in the long run, but it may have prevented this particular argument. Item number 3. Stephen made statements suggesting that Hillary was the cause of the divorce. He suggested that she made a choice. According to the journalist contacted by Hillary's family, Hillary filed for divorce only after finding out that Stephen hired a divorce attorney. She had been willing to work on the marriage before that. Item number 4. Allegedly, Stephen repeatedly admitted that he had a, quote, volcanic temper, unquote, and had sought therapy to control it. Stephen was frustrated that he wasn't getting enough credit for not having lost his temper and could not promise to control his anger in the future. There were also accusations that Stephen's workplace had a cult-like atmosphere. He was a bully and viewed people as either fully with him or his enemy. One possible interpretation of these reports is that Stephen is an impulsive, ill-tempered, and paranoid individual. He is too immature and selfish to act in a respectful manner. Item number 5. From the very beginning of the argument, it appears as though Stephen doesn't understand the concept of a boundary in a marriage. He said that he drew a boundary and would not permit his wife to take the car. Presumably, this car is a marital asset, meaning Hillary can take it if she wants. The term boundary refers to a limit that a person is going to set for their own behavior. It's not about setting a rule that someone else has to follow. A person cannot directly control the behavior of other people through boundary setting. If Stephen was talking about a neighbor who kept borrowing his car, then yes, preventing his neighbor from taking the car could be characterized as Stephen setting a boundary, because Stephen's behavior would be involved. For instance, he would refuse to give the neighbor the keys. However, during the argument captured on the video, Stephen refused to let his wife take the car. He was using the word boundary, but really he was talking about a direct attempt to control his wife's behavior. He was trying to restrict her freedom in order to gain leverage about taking care of chores or something like that. I think what happens sometimes is that people use words that have a specific meaning in the realm of mental health in order to make their behavior appear consistent with a mental health-based decision, like they're trying to do something to protect their own mental health. It sanitizes their bad behavior, like Stephen wasn't infringing on Hillary's rights, rather he was setting a boundary to protect himself. Using the term boundary like this is gaslighting. Stephen was trying to frame Hillary as the problem, like she was violating his boundary. Item number 6. Stephen makes references that may indicate his understanding of marriage. He talked about Hillary refusing to do wifely things, made a comment about respecting men, and mentioned the term discipline. There is the sense that Stephen was upset because Hillary did not complete certain tasks, like this whole situation with the dog's medicine. Maybe he believed that Hillary was obligated based on his conceptualization of marriage, or perhaps the couple had a division of responsibility prior to this that Hillary was not honoring. There's no way to know for sure. Item number 7. During this argument, Stephen was trying to convince Hillary how much her behavior was inconveniencing him. He couldn't go to the gym. He couldn't go to his parents. Hillary was boxing him in. Here we see that Stephen is trying to convince Hillary that she is the problem. He wants her to understand how inappropriate she is. Stephen also highlighted their differing levels of conscientiousness. This appears to be a key theme from this argument. Stephen follows a rigid schedule, and Hillary goes about her day as if time doesn't matter. His solution to Hillary is discipline and respect, presumably on her part, not on his. I find Stephen's proposal curious. If he had followed his own advice, specifically about showing respect, he could have circumvented this entire argument. Item number 8. Stephen made a few comments that would be very difficult for him to defend. For example, he told Hillary to blank watch it, informed her that he didn't love her, and tried to badger her into giving the dog medicine. It's like Stephen just couldn't let that go. He was obsessed with forcing Hillary to complete that one task. Stephen's style of arguing was unrefined, domineering, childish, and selfish. I guess his particular brand of coercion could be referred to as crowd control. As I mentioned, after the recording, Stephen allegedly screamed, "I will blank you up." There is no excuse for this comment. Item number 9. Do I think the argument between Stephen and Hillary should modify the way people feel about Stephen? Like, is this a game changer? I was not a fan of Stephen before this, so it doesn't change anything for me. I think if somebody was a Stephen Crowder fan, it would be remiss not to contemplate his behavior during this argument. Stephen was not living up to his professed beliefs. I don't think that Stephen is a good representative of conservative values. Sometimes the wrong political commentators get elevated in society. I think Stephen is a good example of this. This was the case even before the video of the argument was released. Stephen is just a face in the crowd. In addition to Stephen's impulsive and angry behavior, he lacks the philosophical sophistication to offer anything meaningful to the political debate. He is certainly no leader and not someone who should be placed on a pedestal. How can someone with an abundance of paranoia, anger, impulsivity, and a deficit of empathy be trusted to make good decisions? Stephen often presents himself as sanctimonious, yet this entire time he was a hypocrite. With all political commentators, it's about taking the bad with the good, but one must consider how much bad is acceptable. Now moving to my final thoughts. The argument at the center of this case was ostensibly about Stephen being unhappy with Hillary's level of conscientiousness. In order to coerce Hillary to complete chores, Stephen resorted to unpleasant and unnecessary behavior. Every married couple is going to argue. Sometimes arguing is unavoidable, but it will never change a person's level of conscientiousness. A more effective tactic for dealing with a differential in conscientiousness is coming to an agreement about expectations. Agreements like this are not facilitated by making threats or restricting freedom. Angry discussions are not productive discussions. Heavy-handed tactics, just like certain political commentators, should be lost in the crowd. Those are my thoughts on the Steven Crowder controversy. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.